welcome to Digital Shift, also known as Corporate Evolution Tales. Join us as we dive into the dynamic world of digital transformation. From illuminating case studies to captivating narratives, we uncover the stories behind companies' journeys toward digital excellence. Whether you are a seasoned corporate leader or an aspiring innovator, our podcast explores the shifts, challenges of modern business evolution. Hello everyone, this is another episode of Digital Shift, aka Corporate Evolution Tales, and today my guest is Tim. Thank you so much, Tim, for being my guest today and accepting the invitation. How are you?
Hey Mariam, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Okay, would you like to present yourself, share more about your experience before we will dive into digital transformation?
Absolutely. I think it's a very relevant topic, especially considering I've spent most of my life working as a software engineer. Being a software engineer, I've seen many different aspects, both of pure, I would say like textbook digital transformation, as well as this specialty, which is more the automation sense. So taking things that maybe already are somewhat in the software space, but that can be automated further. So some of my experience, I've done that in the financial realm as my day job. And then in my side hustles, I did that in the social media space, which I think is maybe one of the better examples of how the digital world has reshaped marketing. I encapsulated a lot of this in my recent book called Framed, A Villain's Perspective on Social Media, which encompasses growing up with the internet and seeing this transformation as far as 1990s, the early 2000s, and how the internet came to shape business and shape human interaction.
Yes, that's great. Awesome. So I'm sure you have your opinion about digital transformation. So please share it with our audience. What is your thought about digital transformation? What is it for you?
We can look at the business climate from the 1990s through the early 2000s, and we can look at it from what we know as the dot-com boom cycle, where we had this just explosion in investment and in innovation, especially here in the United States, where businesses were able to access things like in the computing space that previously were only available to, the IBMs of the world or the type of like government research informations in the world. So what digital transformation means to me is saying we're taking things that were previously extremely tedious for humans to work through. And we began to do these things in cyberspace. So either as far as pure software or in types of mechanized calculation. So it doesn't have to be all like on the internet. Yeah, I think overall it's a very, very wide, like all-encompassing subject as we consider how things have changed over the last 20 to 30 years.
Agree. And do you think we can say that there are some specific stages for digital transformation? If we, let's say, speak about digitalizing a platform or like a process in some companies, are there any stages for you that you can separate or highlight for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a few very distinct stages in it. Maybe we can work our way backwards. So I think the most recent one, everybody wants to talk about AI. That's not my specialty, but it's hard to ignore the last few years, just the extent to which we've had this, just complete change and shift in what it means, like how certain skill sets on the human side have been completely devalued. That's kind of the point, right? Like we have calculators at one point, and you would say that calculators certainly made it so that certain skill sets were no longer necessary either. So if we work our way back from AI, then we can start to say, where were some other venues where automation or software or just the digitalization of things made a big impact? And I think when we think about general business functions in the mid 2000s, we see a lot of changes in the business space. So things that were previously done by armies of people doing different types of checks, either compliance, back office stuff, accounting functions. It was a lot easier to do these things on computers. And so I think this was another big stage. And then in the 90s, we saw that at more of like a small scale when people were just getting comfortable using a spreadsheet. And I think in the business sense, that's probably one of the main innovations is not the internet, but is actually spreadsheet and spreadsheet-like software that allow you to present things differently.
Agree. And when speaking about these processes, the processes in general, like what can be automated, do you think that people can actually identify the parts that can be digitalized at the first point? let's say if we have a company or we are working in a company that has a lot of manual stuff done, which are not automated. Is there any point from where we can start the digitalization, in your opinion?
We always have to consider the interface. So, what is it that might make a human better oriented for a task, or that what might be difficult? So, when we say automation, a lot like I see that as happening only in the software space. So, it's like, okay, we can replace somebody typing this on a computer with a computer typing this on the computer. But I think more generally, when we think about how the masses are looking at digital transformation and automation, and even like this massive shift in productive labor, we're thinking about the human computer interface, which means how do you drive a car, or how do you like take out the trash? How do you run a vacuum cleaner? So we're thinking about tasks that are still performed primarily by humans. And the difficult part is the interface. And it's actually coming up with this I guess you would say artificial intelligence to handle all the things that can happen when you are in the driver's seat of a car or in the cockpit of a plane or things like that. And that's the big difference. So I think that it takes an academic level of rigor and understanding to really think about every single decision point, things that a human really wouldn't think about, right? Like when you're driving a car, you say, okay, I look both ways before I, before I proceed, the light turns green. But to teach, or to capture this in the software layer of like what a green light means, what a stop sign means, is actually quite advanced. And that's why some of these things have lagged a bit.
Yeah. And when speaking about these processes, and you mentioned the AI, do you think when we are saying digital transformation or digitalization, is it bringing with it some specific challenges to people that are in this process of automating stuff?
Well, there's a natural tension. One of my friends is like I think it's called like RPA, like robotic process automation expert, and he works at a large bank. And one of the central tensions there is that when you are implementing these strategies, and that's your entire job, right? It's to take human processes and automate them and then put a dollar figure next to it. The tension is that you're a human affecting other humans, and likely hundreds or thousands of them. So it's kind of awkward that you're taking other people's livelihoods into your hands. And I would say that this is one of the most difficult parts. Again, I'm not going to say it's a moral quandary, but there's definitely this consideration of, wouldn't things have progressed more if we didn't care as much about other people, right? You're taking other people's livelihoods into your hands. That's the difficult part, because at the extreme, if everything is automated to the extent it could be, then essentially we need universal basic income, which is maybe a bit beyond your question, but these are definitely the considerations being made at higher levels.
Yeah, definitely agree. And do you think when we speak about these changes, the size of the company matters, how difficult can potentially be the digitalization, or it's still about the experience that people that are implementing all this have? So is it like more difficult for big companies to do these changes, or it's just about the experience that people should have to do those improvements?
Yeah, the paradox is that big companies all have jobs that can be eliminated. And we're seeing this now even in tech, which you would think they're a little bit ahead of the curve. A lot of these legacy industries, which I've never worked in, I've never actually worked at a bank. I've never actually worked at a publicly traded company for that matter. They have entire business segments that could be almost completely automated. But the point is that as you go higher and higher up the chain of management, of decision makers, many of them actually don't have the awareness of how these things could be automated, because they don't hold computer science degrees, right? Like the head of marketing or the head of like accounting or the head of this or that, like they're not thinking that way. And they're also trying to preserve what they do have. So if you preside over a part of the organization and you have 150 people reporting to you in some way, you probably don't want to eliminate half of them, because then it makes you seem less important. So we have these natural, trade-offs and these natural agency problems in larger companies. So larger companies both have the largest opportunity as well as the biggest hindrances to it. Smaller companies now, I've been involved with more startups and much more lean organizations, and a lot of things that can be solved by software, like simply they were never done on the human side. So you think about all the payroll and all the HR functions, most of the HR functions,
Yeah.
this used to be handled by a small team. So it's like, hey, you're kind of blocked. If you want to grow from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40, you have to hire several people. Now it seems like most startups get away with one HR generalist and then using all of these like different back office automation
Yeah.
services. So I think those that are starting and they're automating from the beginning are probably in a better position.
Agree. And if we will speak about social media, and as you mentioned, your book that is also related to it, do you think that in each field there is specific way of digitalizing, or it's more about the tools that you are using? So if we will speak about the field that you are in right now.
Social media has, I think, two phases here. The one is just bringing human social interactions to the digital
Yeah.
sphere. So saying, what are some of the behaviors we saw in real life and how did they get magnified, amplified, whatever on the internet? And what are some of the behaviors that maybe we have disincentivized coming online? So for example, we could probably agree that kindness is less common on the internet because it isn't really rewarded unless somebody happens to take a video of you being kind. Whereas being provocative or having even an offensive nature to your content has exploded on the internet because it gets more clicks and more interest. So that's just the general going from physical world to the digital world. But then when we think about even beyond that, there's another layer, and that's the layer I was involved with, which is, can we take what exists on social media and then profit from it further via the use of software? And this was something that I did where I would say I ran a social media automation service, which is essentially digitizing what was already digitized, right? So it's saying we took something from the real world, we brought it to cyberspace, and then within cyberspace, I created agents that acted as if they were humans to try to exploit a lot of these relationships and profit from them. So yeah, I definitely saw that in two phases. Mine was definitely profitable, but ultimately harmful, right? If you interact with someone on the internet and it looks like Tim O'Hearn and it acts like Tim O'Hearn, but it's actually a computer pretending to be me or impersonating me, that's not only a problem for me, it's a problem for the internet. Because if we scale this up to thousands or tens of thousands of people, the question then is, what can I or can't I trust on the internet? So there's a lot of problems with it. And that comes with the admission that the business and really the businesses I was involved with mostly violated the terms of use of the platforms I operated on.
Right, agree. And speaking about, so you mentioned the AI and other technologies. Do you think that there are any emerging technologies that are supporting the digital transformation in like different fields?
Yes, I'll say this. In the last few months, I've had some opportunities to even interview with or speak with some of the hottest AI startups. So having been a software engineer for long enough, I have a somewhat specialized set of skills. And I could give some shout outs here because some of the ideas are actually amazing and they've received funding from like the absolute top tier of venture firms here.
Yeah.
Many of these startups are looking to take large chunks of processes that are currently done in expensive ways by humans and use AI, which is essentially saying like we have like this neural network approach to solving and reasoning through problems as if we are humans. Yeah, it's pretty big. So I don't want to name any of them specifically, but I've seen it everything from like AI for essentially resolving bugs in your code. If that works, that's like a $20 billion idea. If there's another one I saw, it's like AI for litigation. So like legal processes. And I'm like, okay, that's also like a multi-billion-dollar idea if you get it right. The harder thing now is sifting through what ideas are going to work and what ideas just sound good, but the team has no idea what they're doing. So I think for both of these that I mentioned, the teams were awesome. But for other ones, sometimes I speak to them and it's not clear what is fluff. And this is me as with deep experience as a computer programmer. There's a lot of, there's a lot of creative marketing, and a lot of things coming out as like, oh, you need this, you need that. The truth is that in the consumer space, I don't think there's a ton. I think it's more like specific business functions are going to be wrapped in AI.
Great. And as for like closing this, do you have any advice you can offer to other companies or like individuals to take into account when starting their digital transformation journey? Is there anything that you would like to share from your experience?
My experience has been that this often involves personality types and how personality types clash. Some people want to improve things, other people just want to make themselves look good or protect what they have. So when we start talking about digital transformation, again, in my mind, it means cutting massive amounts of waste and
Uh-huh.
likewise reducing incompetence often at the managerial level. So the advice is that a lot of times, if a company's feedback structure is broken, that makes it very, very difficult to even have the conversations that would kind of be the prelude to making these types of decisions, even doing this type of investigation. So overall, the advice is that it's never been easier, but we have a lot of human issues, a lot of egos and a lot of emotions that
Uh-huh.
tend to get in the way. So I think that's the biggest problem, and that's definitely what I found
That
in my
should be
experience as
handled.
well. Sure.
Agree. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for sharing your experience in digital transformation. Any last words before we will wrap up this episode?
Mariam, thanks for having me. It's really, really relevant now, especially when you have all of these fake AI gurus who come and say, oh, AI for this, AI for that, but none of them even know how to write a line of code. So I think to come and allow people to express themselves from different parts of it, coming from different backgrounds, it's really important. So I appreciate you for that. And yeah, for me, I don't have a course to sell. I'm not a consultant. I'm not looking to push the new AI technology. I wrote a book and I basically sell it at cost. That's called Framed, A Villain's Perspective on Social Media. You can find it on Amazon, Kindle, as well as paperback with the audiobook coming later this summer.
Amazing. Well, I will make sure to link also the book so audience can easily find it in the LinkedIn post. So thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you.